Hello, everyone, and welcome to my annual Oscar prediction video for 2024. Let's get right into it. We have all the categories here, and I have seen every single nomination this year. Just last night, I caught up with one of the Stray animated movies in a sneak preview screening, so I am all set and ready to go for Oscar Sunday coming up this week. So I do have a privileged position. I've seen all of the nominees. So if you're making an Oscar pool with your friends, family, coworkers, whoever, watch this video and you'll have a leg up on the competition. I guarantee it. So all that being said, there's still bound to be surprises and wild things out of left field that you can never predict, but that's half the fun of the Oscars. So here we go. I'll try to keep it as short as I can. I'll do my best to provide some commentary on each of my points, what I think maybe should win and will win, and so you'll be prepared for Sunday. So let's take a look at the Best Picture nominees. We have a full 10 of 10 nominations this year. And overall, I think this is an excellent selection of films. I'm never going to like all 10 of them. That's just what's going to happen. But I would say 8.5 of these movies I really, really enjoyed. So let's get into it. First up, we have American Fiction. This one's directed by Cord Jefferson, I believe his name is. He was like a writer for HBO for a while, but this is his directorial debut. And it is a fantastic movie starring Jeffrey Wright, who plays a writer who he's sort of struggling. He's this genius writer, and he feels like he's not being appreciated by audiences. You know, when he does book talks at different conventions, there's barely anyone in the audience, but he notices that other Black authors, when they focus on things like street life and that sort of thing, playing up into stereotypes, they get a lot of audiences with that like sort of white sympathy. He is determined to make a point, so just on a lark, he submits to his book publishers the most stereotypical Black story you could ever imagine, like with the streets and drugs and daddy issues and all of that stuff, as a joke, and he puts it off on this fake name and pretending he's some guy who lived that. But of course, the people end up loving it and they assume that this is his real life. So now he has to like pretend and put on a ruse. It's a really interesting film with a lot of philosophical debates about, this kind of thing. And also it's balanced with this family drama as he's trying, navigating his relationship with this woman, and his mother is having all kinds of issues. So it's a really fantastic movie. It's a perfect sort of dramedy that talks about race in the modern day. Really cool soundtrack as well. Very good movie. Then we have Anatomy of a Fall. This one is from France. However, it is not France's entry for the foreign language film. For that category, each country that isn't the United States nominates one film to be nominated under the foreign language film. I think if France knew how well received Anatomy of a Fall would have been, they totally would have submitted the film. They submitted some other movie that I have not yet seen, something about like food or chefs or something. Haven't seen it yet. But Anatomy of a Fall is about a woman who may or may not have pushed her husband out of a window, murdering him. And it's pretty much a courtroom trial type movie. And there's flashbacks to her experience, and it exposes some relationship issues and how people view it. And the lead performance is really excellent, especially. Then we have Barbie, the #1 biggest movie of the year. And this was one of my biggest surprises of last year. I couldn't believe how good it was. A movie about a plastic doll ends up telling us a lot about like the state of modern relationships, and it's just so colorful and imaginative and thought-provoking. I think a lot of, young girls seeing the Barbie movie will be exposed to like cinema with a capital C for the first time, like big ideas in films and making them look at their lives. It's a real piece of pop art, and I think it's one of the best movies of last year. But my favorite movie of last year was The Holdovers, which is next. This stars Paul Giamatti as this cantankerous English professor at a boarding school. And he's responsible for the, quote, holdover students, those students who have nowhere to go over the holiday break, who are just staying at the school, and he is in charge of, this oddball group of people alongside the cafeteria worker who recently lost her son. So she's grieving, but she's also a sort of sassy friend of his. This movie is like an old school 1970s Hal Ashby type movie. It feels like an old style of just a hangout movie where you really get to know these characters. Some of my favorite characters of the year. The dialogue is so sharp and witty and heartfelt and funny and will make you cry one second, laugh the next. I just love these characters so much, and I could watch this over and over again. I think this is going to be a movie I revisit a lot. And it's a Christmas movie, so maybe a yearly ritual. Fantastic movie. It is my number one movie of the year, so I would definitely have voted for that. Another one of my favorite movies this year, though, was Killers of the Flower Moon. A lot of great movies on here. This one is Martin Scorsese in his 80s directing an historical epic in the only way that he can. It is amazing what he's able to accomplish at his age. And this one is based on an excellent book. It takes a little bit of a different direction from the book, but it's about this Native American tribe in Oklahoma who, they're driven out of their homelands by the white people, of course, but they discover on their reservation that there's oil, and they become an outlier among a lot of Native communities where they become millionaires. And so, of course, we have some bad acting white people who come in and want that for themselves, right? So they do all kinds of sketchy things, all the way from, trying to insinuate their way into their lives by like manipulating their emotions and arranging marriages and so forth, all the way up to straight up cold-blooded murder. And it is framed like a classic Scorsese gangster movie plus historical epic. It's a combination of so many things. I thought it was excellent. So yeah, check that one out for sure. Then we have the only movie that I didn't really care for on this list. It was Maestro. This was Bradley Cooper playing Leonard Bernstein, famous composer, and it's sort of like his marriage life. He was a gay man, but he was married, and he's this genius composer, and he's kind of a jerk. I don't know. He has like a complicated story. I don't really know that much about him, and I feel like this movie doesn't do enough to really capture what this man's genius was. I don't know. It really was not. It felt like just pure Oscar bait that wasn't earned. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but it was in certain technical categories, it was impressive, which I'll get to in some other categories later. Then we have Oppenheimer, this next to Barbie, Barbenheimer, the phenomenon of this year. I can see why Barbie would be a big hit because it's, sort of a crowd-pleasing movie. But a 3-hour historical drama that's mostly featuring people walking around in suits. Who would have known that would have been one of the biggest money makers of last year? Christopher Nolan, he's been fighting for cinema for so long, movies in theaters and physical media, and doing it practical without relying on CGI, and making really ambitious, big-scale projects. And Oppenheimer is probably the best chance he has at earning Oscars. Usually he makes like sci-fi movies and mind-bending things, but this is a historical drama that definitely feels like Oscar material. And it's about J. Robert Oppenheimer, who created the atomic bomb, and so he's a very controversial figure. Then we have Past Lives. This is a movie I was so glad to see got nominated. It's this tiny little indie drama that I actually first saw at a film festival, the IFF Boston Festival that I volunteer at every year. The director came out for a Q&A. This was the closing night film, and it's this quiet little drama about this woman who grew up in Korea, and she had like a sort of boyfriend there, a relationship, but then her family moves to America, and they lose contact. And she moves on. She has a husband in New York City, and she's, living her best life when, through happenstance, through social media, actually, she reunites and reconnects with her old flame, and now she has like a crisis where this guy like understands deep parts of her that, her current husband would never know. But all these years have gone by, and then they meet up, and then there's some awkward tension between the three of them. It is an excellent little drama that it really talks about relationships in some deep ways, and I thought it was excellent. Next up is another excellent movie that's on a lot of top 10 lists this year. It is Poor Things, directed by the mad Greek director Yorgos Lanthimos. You're in for a weird time when his name is attached to a film, and Poor Things definitely fits into that. It's sort of a take on the Frankenstein story. Emma Stone plays a created being, a reanimated corpse, with the body of a grown woman, Emma Stone, but with the brain of a child. So she is sort of like learning to live life as a child in an adult's body, and it's an incredible performance. But she also like discovers her sexuality. She discovers things about like society and how men treat women. It's basically R-rated Barbie in a lot of ways. Barbie and Poor Things have a dialogue with each other, I would say. Excellent movie, one of the most visually insane movies as well of the year. Hilarious, oddball, not for everybody, but it is very, very interesting filmmaking. And lastly, we have The Zone of Interest. This is Jonathan Glazer's recent film. He is a very provocative type of director from the UK, and this movie is no less provocative. It feels like something to me maybe more likely to be appreciated by like people who visit art museums than typical like cinematic experiences with a full story sort of thing. This takes place entirely in this sort of bucolic, idyllic neighborhood where everything is great. We have these families with the dog, the green grass, everything's great. But this little town is adjacent to Auschwitz, the concentration camp in World War II, and this is where the Nazis officers' families live, while the officers are busy at work, massacring people, by the thousands every single day. And so we never see what happens on the other side of the wall, but there's like little hints here and there. You see like the smokestacks in the background. You hear like gunshots popping off here and there. And the movie is truly about the banality of evil and out of sight, out of mind sort of thing. And it confronts, these Germans who are ignoring all of the horrors over there to enjoy their life here. And it makes you reflect on, what would you do in this situation? And like, people in the modern day, it may not be exactly like this, but there's all sorts of things that we ignore for our own creature comforts. And it's really confrontational, and it's shot in this haunting way. It's a movie that will stick with you long after you watch it, even though it's pretty weird. So that's a really interesting, eclectic group of films that I think is a fantastic grouping. Some years it's kind of like, you like about half of them. I like most of them. So it's hard to predict sometimes, but all that being said, I think this one is fairly easy. So what is my prediction? I think Oppenheimer is going to take it home. It's winning a lot of predictive awards, and I think it has the prestige of a lot of these movies. It has this historical significance about the A-bomb, and like it has this guilty conscienced protagonist, so he's conflicted, and it's epic filmmaking, and it just seems like this big movie that everyone can kind of get behind. Keep in mind, all of these categories are voted on by the Academy members, all of the people who make the movies that we enjoy, on a preferential ballot. So it's not necessarily what movie gets the most number ones. It's averaged. So if the majority of people have Oppenheimer towards the top of their list, it can win. Controversial movies like The Zone of Interest, I feel like, have way less of a chance of winning because a lot of people might put that as their number one, but a lot of people might put it as their number 10 as well. So I think Oppenheimer is a consensus pick that most people can get behind. Even if you're not in love with it, you can appreciate it. So I am predicting it to win this category. All right, Best Director, we have Justine Triet, directing Anatomy of a Fall. She's the only woman on the list. Controversially, Greta Gerwig for Barbie was not nominated. A lot of people are upset by that. Then we have Martin Scorsese from Killers of the Flower Moon. Then we have Christopher Nolan, again, keeping cinema alive, with his non-CGI ways and his, ties and proper British manner. Then we have Yorgos Lanthimos, the insane Greek director, making Poor Things, one of the most inventive movies of the year. And then we have Jonathan Glazer, making Zone of Interest. So who do I think will win Best Director? Kind of a no-brainer to me, but I think it's going to be Christopher Nolan. It's his year. People really respect this guy to the point where the reason why we have 10 nominees in Best Picture right now is kind of because of Christopher Nolan. A lot of people were upset that The Dark Knight did not get nominated for Best Picture that year. So Christopher Nolan, that movie kind of inspired that, and people think it's his time. And I feel like Oppenheimer is his most Oscar-y movie he's ever made. So I think it's going to be Christopher Nolan's year. Next category is lead actor. Okay, this is an interesting thing here. Not as easy to predict this category, I will say. So first up, we have Bradley Cooper for Maestro, playing Leonard Bernstein. What an incredible performance. Had mixed feelings on the movie, but he truly does transform. He's really, really wants that Oscar, and it shows. I mean, it's not bad, but it is kind of mucking for the camera at parts. And he did train for apparently like 6 years or something to be able to conduct it. That's in every interview. He wants people to really know that he really studied for that part. But you know what? It is impressive. So anyway, then we have Coleman Domingo for Rustin. So this is the lone nomination for Rustin. It was a movie that I did not care for that much. It's one of those like historical biopics about an important American type guy. He was one of the people behind the March on Washington with Martin Luther King. But it felt like homework. It felt like a, school movie sort of thing. It was just kind of like whatever. It was blah. But Coleman Domingo is always great. He was on the show Euphoria, and there's one episode where it's just him and Zendaya in a diner having a conversation, and it's one of the best episodes of television I have ever seen, and it's largely thanks to his incredible performance. He's always delivers, so you know what? I'm glad to see him nominated, but maybe not so much the nomination for this movie. I thought he deserved it more for The Color Purple, which got really shafted this year at the Oscars. I thought that deserved more love. Next up, we have Paul Giamatti from The Holdovers. This is who would get my vote. Again, my favorite characters of the year were all in this movie, and Paul Giamatti, he's a reliable character actor. He's been in so many great movies. He's really like this kind of a jerk in this movie. He smells like fish. His eyes are all weird, and he's an off-putting guy until you get to know him, which makes him great for like this grouping, this found family of sorts of The Holdovers. Then we have, and I never know how to pronounce this. It's either Cillian Murphy or Cillian Murphy. I keep forgetting, but he plays Oppenheimer in Oppenheimer. So there you go. Very sort of stoic, maybe more reserved performance than a lot of these other ones. But it is a powerhouse, and a lot of people love Cillian Murphy. He's like Paul Giamatti, has been an actor for a long time and has yet to win this award. Then we have Jeffrey Wright for American Fiction. I was glad to see him nominated here. Although it is a dramedy, it is a comedy, and you don't see comedy actors rewarded too often. Sort of like Paul Giamatti, that's a comedy as well. But who do I think is going to win? I predict Cillian Murphy is going to win for Oppenheimer. Although I would love to see Paul Giamatti win, and I do think he has a chance. I think Oppenheimer, he plays the main character. And if that movie is going to win the biggest award of the night, I can just see him going with it. And he does deliver a solid performance in it. I don't think it's as charismatic as Giamatti and Wright, for the simple reason that they are more lovable, relatable characters. But Cillian Murphy, you understand how he is feeling. this complicated man, this genius that we can't even fathom the way he thinks. He's our in to his emotions and his conflicting sense of ethics throughout this whole journey. So he is the face of the movie of the night. So I think he's going to win. Next up, we have Best Lead Actress. We have Annette Bening with Naiad. This was a Netflix movie where she plays this real-life Olympic swimmer. It's either Diane or Diana Naiad. I forget her name. But she is accomplished an incredible feat. This is a true story of her swimming from Cuba to Florida. And she's an old woman. That was her dream ever since she was in her 20s. And you know what? She didn't let age stop her. Then we had Lily Gladstone for Killers of the Flower Moon. She plays Annie Burkhart, I believe her name is. Sorry if I get it wrong, but she is like the stoic woman who is being wooed by one of the creepazoids, white guys who is, trying to use her to get her money. But he does at the same time weirdly fall in love with her. They have a very complicated relationship for sure. And she is so good in this movie, sort of like Cillian Murphy for Oppenheimer. It's a very subdued performance. It's not your typical Oscar-winning or even nominated performance, but she has so much like gravitas and meaning to every little gesture, and she's very stoic and powerful. And you get a sense that she knows almost that she's being manipulated by this guy, but she's charmed by him at the same time. A lot of conflicting emotions that are very interesting. Then we have Sandra Hüller from Anatomy of a Fall, the French film, and she is also excellent. She has one speech in this where in a flashback, she's like yelling at her husband, and that's like forever on her acting reel. Also, interestingly enough, she's also one of the main actresses in Zone of Interest. So she's really, in a couple heavy hitter movies of last year. Then we have Carey Mulligan of Maestro. She plays Leonard Bernstein's wife, and of course he is gay, so there's like this weird love triangle going on. She is good in the movie, but I wasn't a fan of the movie. Then we have Emma Stone from Poor Things, one of the greatest. She is a fantastic actress, and she had a great year also with the show The Curse, which I highly recommend if you're into awkward humor and very weird, dark, oddball things. But who do I think is going to win of all these ladies? I predict Emma Stone from Poor Things. I think what she does in this movie is absolutely incredible. She did win previously, so you might think that the Academy won't double dip. She won previously for La La Land pretty recently too. But I think this performance is on a different level. It shows a range from her that maybe we've never even seen before. It's a very, very strange, daring, bold performance where she bears her all literally. We see everything, and she does really wild things that with a lesser actor would have been absolutely cringeworthy. I think her closest competition is another person with Stone in her last name, Gladstone, Lily Gladstone. But I do think that Poor Things is the flashier performance, so I think she'll win out. Next up, we have Best Supporting Actor. We have Sterling K. Brown from American Fiction. He plays Jeffrey Wright's brother in the film. Then we have Robert De Niro in Killers of the Flower Moon. I think this is one of his best performances in years. This is who I would want to win, is Robert De Niro. He is the big boss pulling all the strings in this town, and he is so deliciously evil in it. It was a great role for him. Then we have Robert Downey Jr. in Oppenheimer playing the sort of antagonist, trying to frame Oppenheimer and get him in legal trouble and all that stuff. Then we have Ryan Gosling in Barbie playing Ken. Then we have Mark Ruffalo in Poor Things playing a sketchy guy trying to sleep with the main character, Bella Baxter. But who do I think will win? I think Robert Downey Jr. It's his time. I think Oppenheimer is going to win a whole lot of awards. And even though there's a lot of strong contenders in this category, I think Robert Downey Jr. is the guy. He's in all those Marvel movies. He, helped make Hollywood a lot of money. And now he's doing like a prestigious Oscar-y type film. A lot of people really respect his like overall acting journey. And I think people want to award him with this award. So I think it's going to go to him, even though Robert De Niro, again, people taking older people for granted. I think Robert De Niro deserves this, and I think Scorsese also is kind of taken for granted. He's not even really in the conversation for director. But anyway, Robert Downey Jr. is who I bet will win. All right, next up we have Best Supporting Actress. We have Emily Blunt from Oppenheimer, which I don't know why she's nominated. She really doesn't have that much to do in Oppenheimer, but it's Oppenheimer. It's just getting all the awards. Although I do love Emily Blunt. She is amazing. Then we have Danielle Brooks for The Color Purple, the sole nomination for The Color Purple. I think in any other, in the past, I think The Color Purple would have had a way more nominations. But I think with the more international voting body of the Academy in recent years, we see more things like Anatomy of a Fall and Zone of Interest. And The Color Purple is unfortunately shut out, but I thought it was an excellent movie musical. Danielle Brooks is amazing in it. I thought Fantasia Barrino also deserved an actress nomination. Then we have America Ferrera for Barbie, delivering one of the most iconic movie monologues in recent history. I think it sums up the year. She talks about all of the problems that women face in the modern day, and it is iconic. It's a rah-rah moment that gets claps from audiences. Then we have Jodie Foster from Nyad playing Nyad's supportive friend. And then finally, we have Divine Joy Randolph playing a grieving mother in The Holdovers. She's like the cafeteria help there, and she's sort of friends with the Paul Giamatti character. Who do I think is going to win? This one's tough, but I predict Divine Joy Randolph. Even though America Ferrera I had in here for a long time, I do think Divine Joy Randolph is going to win because she's winning a lot of predictive awards, and she is the beating heart of The Holdovers in a lot of ways. She's kind of holding all these, this whole school together behind the scenes. She has really powerful performance, and like I said, I love the characters in this film, and I just can picture her winning, although I could also picture America Ferrera winning for Barbie. I think it's between those two. Next up, we have Best Animated Feature. First up, we have Boy and the Heron, the conceivably final film from Hayao Miyazaki, the founder of Studio Ghibli, or Ghibli, however you pronounce it, who made films like Princess Mononoke and Spirited Away. This is a really weird sort of Alice in Wonderland-y almost type movie. It was not my favorite Miyazaki ever, but, it is his final film, and it has some truly insane Miyazaki visuals. Then we have Elemental. This was a cute little Pixar movie. Maybe not, again, one of their best either, but it was solid. Then we have Nimona, based on the young adult graphic novel of the same name, sort of a sci-fi fantasy coming-of-age story about this young girl who is a shapeshifter. Then we have Robot Dreams. This was the final movie I saw on the nominee list. I saw an early sneak preview screening of it. I loved that one. I would actually vote for that in this category. It's this tiny little Spanish movie that was at the Cannes Film Festival, and it's about this lonely bachelor dog who orders a robot friend for himself, and it shows their connection. And it's almost like past lives if it was with cute animals and a robot. It is, and also not a single word of dialogue is spoken the entire time. It's a truly silent film, and it's impressive how it tells this entire like friendship / love story with no words. It's an incredible piece of animation. I would give it to that. Then we have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Into the Spider-Verse won, the original of this series won when it was nominated, and its sequel, Across the Spider-Verse, kind of ups the ante, even more insane visuals that look straight out of a comic book. So, what do I think will win, though? I want Robot Dreams to win. Do I think it will win? Unfortunately not. I don't think it has a chance. But Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, I think, has the best chance of winning here. Although, again, I do take a little bit of a risk for the same reason as Emma Stone. Do they dare double-dipping winning this? the Academy might be like, well, we already awarded Into the Spider-Verse. But I do think this is enough of a step up in terms of the animation and the wild variety of animation styles they include in this film that I do think it will win again. Boy and the Heron, I think, is its closest competition, again, because they might want to honor a legend of animation like Hayao Miyazaki. And it was also very well received as well. So I think it's between those two, but I'm going to go with Spider-Man. Maybe I'll regret that. I don't know. Next up, we have cinematography. This is what the camera is doing. And of note, every one of these nominees combines both black and white and color in their color palette. And I think, that's just the theme this year. Black and white and color in the same movie. Whoa. Anyway, we have El Conde, which is a Spanish film from Chile about the ruthless Chilean dictator. I forget his last name. It's like Pinochet, something like that. However, it envisions this ruthless dictator, who is a real-life person, as a vampire. So it's sort of like this alt history that imagines what if he was an actual vampire. Weird movie. The cinematographer, Edward Lockman, though, he was an alumni of the school I got my film degree from, Ohio University, which is kind of interesting. I wasn't a huge fan of this movie, though, even though it looked pretty cool at times. I don't know. The story didn't quite click with me. Killers of the Flower Moon did look amazing, and it's nominated here. Then we have Maestro. Then we have Oppenheimer. Then we have Poor Things. All of these looked really solid. But what do I think is going to win? We have a trend here. Oppenheimer. So even though I would give this to Poor Things because I think it's one of the most visually dazzling films of last year, Oppenheimer did also have amazing cinematography. Just the way they visualized the atomic bomb testing and also like the science behind it. They will like zoom in onto particles like flying all over the screen. It like visualized complex physics and, science-y stuff in really, really cool, practical ways, not through CGI. For that alone, I think it does deserve to win, even though Poor Things, I think, is one of the most visually striking movies of last year. All right, next up we have costume design. First up, we have the very pink costumes of Barbie. Then we have Killers of the Flower Moon, historical epic Napoleon, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things. All of these, I think, had excellent costume design. Oppenheimer, though, yeah, it did have good, costumes in it, like period, authentic ones, but, it's just suits at the end of the day. So I don't know if it deserves to win this category. It's steamrolling a lot. I don't know if it deserves it, but do I think, will it win? No, I don't. I think Poor Things is going to win this category. I think it's down between Barbie and Poor Things. However, I think Barbie, the pinkness might, rub some people the wrong way. It's too girly and pink all the time, whereas Poor Things, the entire world, every costume has this sort of like Victorian, steampunky, weird, colorful, eclectic look to it. That I can just imagine winning. And it's just the more like, quote, mature movie than Barbie. At least how I think the voters will think about it. But I don't know. You never know with these sort of below the line categories, how they might go. These are where the surprises happen. But I think Poor Things is going to get it. And that was also what I would vote for as well. Alrighty. Documentary feature. I will tell you all 5 of these incredibly depressing films. First up, we have Bobby Wine, the People's President. This is about a singer, a pop singer in Uganda who is trying to run for office, but the dictator pretty much in power does not like that, and he has various assassinations carried out, assassination attempts rather, carried out against him. It's a pretty wild story, but entertaining in a weird way, because this guy is a cult of personality, and, I fear for his life, to be honest. Then we have The Eternal Memory, which is very depressing. It's about a guy who's suffering from Alzheimer's, and we see his very loving relationship with his wife. And, of course, these two people are the most lovable people ever who, were fighting for causes and stuff like that, so it's just very depressing to see this guy, forget life things. Then we have Four Daughters. This is a film about this mother whose family is broken. Two of the four daughters left the family to join radical terrorist causes, and the basically actors come in to recreate the family's life, mixing like the two daughters that are left and the mom along with actors to sub in for them. It's very bizarre, and it's almost like this weird acting through their trauma as like a filmed therapy session. It's really depressing. I'll just say that. Then we have To Kill a Tiger. This one's somehow even more depressing than Four Daughters. This is in India. This young girl was raped at a family wedding by a few guys from her village, and the village now deems her as stained, and they think that she should marry her rapist because otherwise no one will ever want to be with her. And so they're trying to sweep this under the rug as her parents are trying to seek justice through the law against her attackers. The whole village is, they're ostracized by her village, and it's like, you can't believe it. It's like so infuriating and depressing the entire time, but it's essential viewing. Then we have 20 Days in Mariupol. If you thought it would get less depressing, well, it's not, because this is about Ukraine being bombed by Russia, and it's like, on the ground footage of that. So what do I think is going to win out of this pack of uproarious knee slappers? It is 20 Days in Mariupol. I think, all things being equal, I think this movie is about something that the world wants to get behind right now, is Ukraine and, the turmoil that's being faced by them, at the hands of Russia. I think this one is just the most pressing right now. I think it's going to win. All right, next up is documentary short film. First up, we have the ABCs of book banning. This is about the various books that have been banned in libraries and schools for various reasons. You hear firsthand accounts from kids in these schools saying why they don't think that they should be banned. That part was cool. The part that wasn't so cool is when they just have pictures of books and they put the word banned over it like a graphic, and they don't explain why. They never explain why the books are banned. So it's just like a weird montage of books. This is something that's very near and dear to my heart, is like, the freedom of reading and, stuff like that. But this movie was not that great. I would not vote for that. What I would vote for is the next one, The Last Repair Shop. This is about this small little operation in LA that repairs children's instruments at school for free. They're the only organization that does this in the country, I think is what they say in the documentary. And we hear testimonials from the kids. We hear testimonials from the people that work there, and we get their backstories and how they ended up there. It is a truly moving, emotional ride. And by the end, when they sort of all come together and play this musical piece, I was crying. So I loved it. I hope that wins. Then we have Island in Between. This is sort of a personal story of this guy talking about his life, meanwhile highlighting the tensions between China and Taiwan. Then we have The Barber of Little Rock, about this guy who is helping sort of down on their luck people, like, criminals get back on their feet with jobs, stuff like that. Then we have Nai Nai and Waipo, which is about two elderly Asian women who are best friends to the end, and they like live together, they do everything together, and they also sleep in the same bed, and they always blame each other for each other's farts. So it's a pretty funny, lighthearted romp. So what do I think will win out of this crop of doc shorts? I think it's going to be my favorite, The Last Repair Shop. There's not a lot to go by with some of these because there's few predictive awards to go by to read the tea leaves, so it was. So generally, I have to look at just previous winners and also what I think, just what am I vibing with? What do I think, people will enjoy? And The Last Repair Shop, if you watch that short and you don't like it, if you think it's a bad short, I think you're a bad person. I'm going to say it right here. It is so good and moving that, I don't see how anyone could not like it. There's like, I just loved it so much. So I'm voting for it. I'm predicting it. All right, film editing. This is how movies are put together. And we have Poor Things, we have Oppenheimer, we have Killers of the Flower Moon, The Holdovers, and Anatomy of a Fall. Sometimes these are hard to predict, film editing. You don't know what direction they're going to go. These are where the surprises usually happen. If I were voting for this, I would give it probably, ironically, to Killers of the Flower Moon. Now, that might be a controversial pick because a lot of people complain about the runtime. It's like 3.5 hours long. There's like, people are protesting it, saying we should have an intermission in the middle of this. However, that being said, for a historical epic like that, for that length, it moves so quickly. I think it is an excellently edited film. However, I think they're all pretty excellently edited. But what do I think will win? I think Oppenheimer is going to sweep it. Usually, film editing matches with Best Picture most years, and I can just picture it winning. It is very well edited, cutting across different time periods. And Chris Nolan movies have won in this category previously, like with Dunkirk. I wasn't a fan of Dunkirk's editing that much, and it still won. It was really disorienting, I thought, in a bad way. Oppenheimer is also kind of disorienting, but to me, it makes a little bit more sense with the movie. I don't know. Sometimes Chris Nolan movies are a little bit too in your face for me. I would love to see something like The Holdovers win. But, it is what it is. I think Oppenheimer is just going to sweep a lot of these categories. Then we have international feature. We have Io Capitano from Italy. This is an immigrant story of these two African cousins who are trying to seek a better life, and they, cross the dangerous channels across deserts and seas to go to Italy. And it is so, so well done. The young actor in this is so incredible. They're like teenagers in the movie. I don't know how old they are in real life, but it was really excellent. Then we have Perfect Days, another excellent foreign film. This one is from Japan, but it's directed by a German guy, Wim Wenders, who's a pretty iconic director in his own right. This follows this sort of older man character who is a janitor, but he looks at life so beautifully, and he loves reading, and he appreciates the small things in life, even the rustling of leaves in the trees. He really appreciates and finds poetic beauty in. Now, it doesn't sound like the kind of thing I would like. It sounds kind of pretentious and kind of lame, but you are sold on it. The main actor is so good, and it's so moving, and it's heartwarming. It's an excellent film. Then we have Society of the Snow from Spain. This is about the infamous plane crashing in the Andes, and all the young guys had to start eating each other to stay alive. Then we have The Teacher's Lounge from Germany. This is sort of like a psychological drama about this teacher who, without spoilers, gets in over her head in a certain situation as there's tons of miscommunications, and it spirals out of control. As a teacher myself, it was almost like a perfect nightmare for me, and seems kind of possible what happens in the film. Very good movie. And then finally, of course, we have Zone of Interest, which is also nominated for Best Picture, so it's probably obvious that I am going to predict it to win. Every year, there's always one foreign film in this category that's also nominated for Best Picture. It makes this almost painfully easy to predict. But it seems pretty obvious to me that The Zone of Interest is going to win this category. If anything else wins, I'd be shocked. Then we have Makeup and Hairstyling. We have Golda, about Golda Meir, played by Helen Mirren. She is the Israeli prime minister, making all sorts of wartime decisions during the height of the conflict in Israel. And we have some old lady makeup. There we go. Totally transformed. Then we have Maestro. We have Oppenheimer. There he is, Albert Einstein. We have Poor Things with Willem Dafoe in the sort of very creepy, scarred up makeup. And then we have Society of the Snow again. A lot of old people makeup being highlighted here. Excellent makeup all around, but what do I think will win? This was kind of tricky for me. I wasn't exactly sure what direction to take this in. But I am predicting Maestro. When I first saw Bradley Cooper in this shot that I am showing right now, I was blown away. I could not believe how detailed this was. If you see it on a full screen TV or a widescreen, every little pore. I mean, you do not question that he is an old man. I mean, the Bradley Cooperisms still shine through, but it is so, so good. I think it deserves to win. It was I couldn't believe what I was watching. Next up is music for original score. Now, I did record a podcast with my colleague and friend, Nick Bamback. His podcast, Rock in Retrospect, I went into detail about all the music categories. So I'm going to keep this short. I am going to leave in the comments a link to that podcast. You can hear my really in-depth comments on it. But we have American Fiction, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things. If you listen to the podcast, you'll know that I am predicting Oppenheimer yet again. Ludwig Göransson is going to win his second Oscar, more than likely, at the award ceremony. However, I hope Killers of the Flower Moon takes it because I thought that was the best score of last year. Next up, we have Original Song. Again, listen to that podcast. I talk about all the music categories. We have The Fire Inside from Flamin' Hot, the Cheeto movie that tells lies about the real man who invented Flamin' Hot Cheetos, written by Diane Warren, who again is going to lose. Spoiler alert. She's the biggest loser of the Oscars. She's lost so many times. She's nominated every year and loses every time. Then we have I'm Just Ken from Barbie. We also have What Was I Made For from Barbie. That's the Billie Eilish song. Then we have Wa Zahachi, something like that. The song from Killers of the Flower Moon. I believe it's at the end of it. And then It Never Went Away from American Symphony. This is a documentary about John Batiste and his making this big symphony and also caring for his wife who has cancer. Anyway, what do I think is going to win? I think it's going to be the Billie Eilish song. Again, she's going to win her second Oscar, and she's like in her 20s, which is unbelievable. Diane Warren is going to have to watch a young 20-something earn her second Oscar while she goes home empty-handed. Is there justice in the world? No, there is not. But this is a much better song than the Hot Cheetos movie, so that's my 2 cents. Alrighty, best production design. This is all about, the set building and the worlds that are created, the production overall. We have the very pink world of Barbie. In fact, fun fact, they ran out of this shade of pink because of the Barbie movie, the paint company that had it. Or at least that's what legend would have you say. But yeah, very pink world of Barbie. Then we have Killers of the Flower Moon, Napoleon, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things. What am I predicting? I am predicting Poor Things again. I think Poor Things is going to steal a lot of Barbie's thunder. If they weren't released in the same year, I think Barbie would have taken this category. But again, I think the pink world of Barbie, I just can't imagine those editors working with the neckbeards and all the tech guys. Would they vote for the pink world of Barbie for best production design? I think Poor Things deserves it anyway. It is a wild, steampunky world, and it feels almost like early Tim Burton. That level of pure imagination that we're seeing on screen. Really good stuff. I think any of these would be deserving wins. They all created these worlds, but Poor Things is the most imaginative one, so I hope it wins. Then we have Best Animated Short Film. These short film categories are always the ones that might trip you up. You know what I mean? Most people don't watch them, but that's why you have an expert in the house. All right, first up we have Pachyderm, which is sort of told in flashback of a girl's very uncomfortable relationship to a family member. It is very visually dazzling. Actually, all of these movies are quite excellent, very unique. I thought the animated short films this year, there was not a loser in the bunch. They are all excellent. Pachyderm was kind of a sad one. Then we have 95 Senses, about a guy on death row, and it tells his story. Directed weirdly by the guy who directed Napoleon Dynamite, but you would never know that just watching it. Then we have Our Uniform, which is animated in a style I've never quite seen before, where it's literally talking about it's a movie about someone from Iran, I believe, talking about the hijab. It's like a coming of age story, talking about their clothes in particular and what people wear in private versus public and how you have to cover up. But it's all animated through an actual clothing items. It's like a stop motion sort of thing, and it's all buttons and sewed on things. It was really ingenious. I'd never seen anything quite like it. Then we have my personal favorite of the bunch, Letter to a Pig. This one's a Holocaust story about a guy who survived, and he's addressing this class of apathetic teenagers. Again, maybe I kind of relate to it a little bit. But they aren't half paying attention to him except for one young girl. And he's talking about how he would hide from the Nazis in this pigsty. He would literally hide among the pigs. And he talks about writing a letter to a pig to sort of thank him for saving him, quote unquote. And it's sort of this abstract sort of journey, and the animation is really incredible. It kind of mixes like rotoscoped animation, like of actual like body parts mixed with a more abstract design. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. A lot of these are really incredible animated short films this year. And then finally, we have War is Over, inspired by the music of John and Yoko. This is created in part by Weta Digital, Peter Jackson's company. Of course, John and Yoko, Peter Jackson loves the Beatles. He had that like 9,000 hour long documentary about them. And War is Over is about set in World War I, and it kind of shows like wartime, like how there's this chess game between both sides, and they're giving each other moves through a carrier pigeon, and it kind of shows how pointless war is, and it's really well done. It feels the most Pixarian out of all of these shorts, like the most classical type of short. The other ones were a little bit more different and abstract. So do I think they're going to go more abstract or go with the classic? I think they're going to go with the classic one. War is Over. I think it's going to win. I would give it to Letter to a Pig, but I think this one it works. And there's no dialogue at all. So it like translates to all languages. It transcends things. It has a recognizable music track in it. And so I think it's going to win. Next up, we have live action short film. These are even harder to predict sometimes. First, we have the Netflix short The After, which is about a guy grieving over his daughter and wife who died. Then we have Invincible, which is a French drama about a delinquent youth who is in sort of a home for troubled young people. Very solid film. Then we have Night of Fortune, about this guy grieving over his dead wife. A lot of dead people in these, apparently. But he makes an unlikely friendship with a guy at the morgue viewing the dead bodies. It has a very dark sense of humor that only the sort of like Sweden, Finland, that sort of Scandinavian area, they have this kind of dark humor to them. And this definitely has that. Red, White, and Blue is very timely. It's an abortion drama that has kind of this very sad ending. And then we have The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, which is Wes Anderson's lone nomination this year. Shut out. He had a feature-length film, Asteroid City, didn't even get production design this year. But this is a Netflix short based on a Roald Dahl story. So, what do I think is going to win? Out of all these, I think it's a little unfair, because one is like way bigger budget and then the others has a higher profile. But I think The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar is going to win this award. It has the biggest name actors, has the most luscious look to it. And I thought it was excellent. I would almost like guiltily vote for it because it doesn't have like the message of Red, White, and Blue. It talks about like, abortion rights and stuff like that at a time when we really should be having those conversations. But The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar is just like such a treat, such a wonderfully warm adaptation of Roald Dahl. And I think every Roald Dahl story should be adapted in this style. Roald Dahl is a character narrating it, and the characters like speak directly to the camera anytime there's narration. It's like such a unique way of adapting a story that I've never seen before, and it's just so charming and fun and colorful and exactly the best of Wes Anderson. So I think it will win. Then we have Best Sound. These are always very, very difficult to predict. You never know where they're going to go with it. First, we have The Creator, which is a movie that wasn't super successful, but on a technical level, it was very impressive what they did with a, smaller budget than you would expect than like a typical Star Wars movie or something like that. Sort of a sci-fi robot movie. Then we have Maestro, of course, the music movie. Best Sound makes sense. Then we have Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning, Part 1. We have Oppenheimer and Zone of Interest. I would vote for Zone of Interest for what I said before. The soundtrack, the slight, things you hear in the background, it's all about the sound mix, and it's this haunting thing. It really is a full character in the movie. What do I think will win, though? I think Oppenheimer is going to win. It is the loudest, and it does have good sound, I guess. Although I do think the mix with the musical score is distracting, just like with Tenet from earlier in the 2020s. The score was overpowering, so I don't know. I think Oppenheimer is loud. It does some interesting stuff, especially during that. The probably the best scene in the movie is when they test the A bomb and they're just all in awe over it, and the way they use silence and music and sound. That was excellent. Throughout the movie, though, there were times where I wasn't a fan of it. But anyway, it doesn't matter because I think this is going to steamroll a lot of categories, and I think people are just going to check it off on that box. But if Zone of Interest wins, I'll be so happy. I do think it is possibly the most unique use of sound in a movie of last year. And lastly, we have visual effects. We have the creator again. We have Godzilla -1, one of my favorite movies of last year. And there's probably no movie I am cheering on more during this ceremony than Godzilla -1. For its one lone category, I loved it. This was like Oppenheimer meets Jaws plus Godzilla. Truly an excellent film. I loved it. I also really loved Guardians of the Galaxy Part 3. I feel like people are like just skipping over it, but it's so, so good. People forget how good it is, I think, sometimes. Rocket Raccoon's backstory is amazing, and the way they animated him and his animal friends in that testing facility was amazing, and I think it deserves visual effects. This is a strong year for visual effects. Then we have Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 again. Truly epic action scenes. That movie that series delivers on the action for sure. And then we have Napoleon, which I'm kind of surprised was nominated. Maybe if I saw a behind the scenes featurette, I would be more like apt to realize how many visual effects were in it, but I don't think of it as a visual effects heavy movie. But what do I think will win? Maybe it's wishful thinking, but I'm predicting Godzilla -1, and I really hope that I am not wrong. I loved it, what they were able to accomplish on a relatively small budget, and it is a Japanese film as well. A foreign language film to win visual effects would be incredible. So anyway, those are my predictions for this year's Oscars. I'm like running out of voice now. I've been talking for so long after a work day, but I must record it. I must, put this out there, and if I get them all right, I have bragging rights forever. I've yet to get them all right. I think the best year I ever did was the year Gravity was a nominee, because that just swept a lot of the tech categories. I got 20 out of 24 categories. I think there's only 23 categories now, so maybe I'll go 23 for 23. I don't know. We'll find out on Sunday. Let me know what you guys think will win, or if I'm totally wrong on certain things. And if you're using this video to inspire your own prediction videos, you're welcome. So I'm excited to see how it turns out. Thank you for watching, and have an amazing Oscar Sunday.